Hello and welcome to Head to Toe Healing Live. We are so happy you could join us today. My name is Coach Karen. And if you're unfamiliar with Head to Toe Healing, it is a practice that Dr. Kevin Reese has designed to combine three macro methods: nutrition, musculoskeletal support, and mindfulness. And today we have on our call three of our specialists to answer questions. So if you have questions about head to toe healing or a chronic condition that you're trying to get through or get out of pain, that's what head to toe healing is all about. Dr. Kevin Reese has developed this system to help people reverse chronic conditions, and we're seeing fantastic testimonies all the time of people that are getting out of those situations. So today we have a topic that we're going to cover for you, and we'll sprinkle in some questions if they pop up in the feed as well. So enter those there. But today our topic is diabetes. And as you probably have heard, diabetes has been going on forever. And with that, years ago, it was a chronic condition that really we only found it occurring in people as they were aging. But now it's more prevalent. It seems like it's touching all ages, which is pretty frustrating. And a lot of people are wondering why it's happening and how they can get out of that condition. A lot of times it's reversible. So I want to start with our posture coach, Coach Sean, to see how the posture perspective falls in line with diabetes and how somebody might approach that.
Well, it's still going to be along the same lines as how I say there's kinks in the hose for certain issues where any type of postural impingement starts to block those hoses, and that means that less nutrients or less sewage, our body's lymphatic system is able to drain out. But even deeper, when you're misaligned, that means whether you're twisted or your hip or shoulder is hiked, it can start to compress certain organs. And so it's compressing those main organs, whether it be the pancreas, or it can even affect the, intestines in a way to where food is just not moving out efficiently. And so it's just posture, the way posture is able to get in the way of or start or contribute to certain disease would just be because of that, just because any type of misalignment can also block or compress certain organs or systems from, you know, acting in their full potential. Even the nervous system, the body's ability to communicate within itself is getting impinged as well. And so that can be things that we look out for when we're helping people with this type of condition.
So speaking with the nervous system, that leads me to pass the baton to Coach Gingy. With the nervous system, that sounds like it might be a mind-body connection. Can you help elaborate a little bit more how that might play into the diabetes situation?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Karen. There's absolutely a connection between the mind and the body. The way that Dr. Reese outlines it is that you got basically this computer in your head. You have this data, these programs, all of this stuff running, and the nervous system is the interface between the mind and the body. So literally what's going on in the mind will translate through the nervous system into the tissues, into the cells, and it can absolutely have an impact on cellular function. One good example of this is the placebo effect. If you believe that the diabetes is permanent, if you believe that you have to watch out for carbs and you work your way into these very specific habits to try to mediate situations, it's very plausible that you could be sustaining that type of dysfunction in the body simply by the way that you approach it in your mindfulness. So, absolutely, mind body connection is going to impact this, especially if you're not present and aware to what you're eating and how you're eating, how fast you're eating, how those foods impact you, or what nutrients may be key. A lot of people will sit down on the couch and have terrible posture and just shovel in junk food while they watch TV and not be mindful at all to what's going on. And then the next day, oh, I don't know why I feel this way. And so it is really important to bring mindfulness into the conversation around diabetes so that we're not omitting some potential underlying root cause of the diabetes. Whereas if you just do posture and you just do nutrition, for some people, their missing element will be the mindfulness part.
Thank you for that. Coach Ryan, can you provide information how nutrition affects being diabetic?
Well, to me, the primary root cause of diabetes and hypoglycemia and even type 1 diabetes, although that's a different conversation, is nutritional deficiency. We need tons of different nutrients to manage blood sugar, to produce and utilize insulin, to get the liver to properly process the excess glucose. And if any one of those systems is malfunctioning, you're going to have a blood sugar problem. And it could show up as high or low blood sugar, could fluctuate between both of them. You could have both symptoms at the same time because in one day you could be high blood sugar sometimes and low blood sugar other times. And historically, it's been quite easy for us to reverse diabetes or to help people reverse diabetes. I've seen it tons and tons of times. My fastest result was early on in the business, and that was in 4 days, where a woman got off of all of her blood pressure drugs and blood sugar drugs at the same time with permission from her doctor. I've seen it numerous other times in a week or 2 weeks, but as always, I do have to mention it's become harder in recent years, and I do believe that's because of EMF. And although there are no large double-blind studies on the topic of EMF causing blood sugar dysfunction, there are a bunch of isolated case studies that strongly support that. So I would say nutrient deficiencies is number one, EMF is number two. And of course, both problems are affecting us as a society right now.
Thank you for that. In looking at different symptoms that people have with diabetic conditions, a lot of times they start experiencing numbness and tingling in their feet or hands. How can posture affect that or improve that? Coach Sean, do you have any insights on that topic?
Well, it runs in the same theme of like compressions, and anytime you're in a misaligned position, those joints, those bones, those muscles are going to compress certain nerves. And that just makes it to where the nerves aren't able to function because they're being squeezed essentially. And so um, it's pretty simple. It sounds pretty simple because it is. This stuff is extremely simple, but what is happening is that we're in an age where we're we're like a tiny dot in human history, and we're moving less than ever before. To commute, we sit. To eat, we sit. To work, we sit. I mean, we're constantly sitting all the time, and we're just in a sedentary lifestyle. So we don't get that opportunity to move how we were I built to move. Like out of nowhere, we just started sitting more than ever before. So it's going to affect the human body. And I think that is the true symptom or cause to pain and discomfort later on in life. I heard someone say uh, pain and discomfort is not a symptom of getting older, but it will certainly happen if you live a sedentary lifestyle. So.
And it almost seems like people are becoming more accustomed, more accepting of experiencing more and more symptoms as they age. It's almost like it's a rite of passage. The older you get, the more symptoms you have. And they don't realize there's actually things that can be done to reverse those symptoms. And that's what I really love about the program that Dr. Reese has put together, is because we focus on a symptom score. It's ranging anywhere from 0 to 60, and people come in all over the board with a variety of symptoms. But once they start the head to toe healing process, that symptom score slowly starts to drop down lower and lower, and they start to feel better and better. It's incredible, because a lot of times what I've found in talking to people, whether it's at a family gathering, a business function, people are frustrated because they're not getting the answers they're looking for. They're searching, but they're in a cycle where they're not getting solutions. And that's what is unique about our program. If you're curious about head to toe healing, go to drkevinreese.com, check out his books, Peace Over Pain, Medical Monopoly. That's a great place to start to get information to see if it's even for you. But on that note, back to our topic with tingling in the feet and limbs. Coach Ryan, could you provide any insights on that as well from a nutritional perspective?
Well, I would just put it as a complication of a blood sugar problem, right? The blood sugar problem happens first, even if you don't notice it or it's not diagnosed. Because, of course, remember, it's not until you pass the threshold that doctors will do anything with you, right? If your A1C isn't like 6.5, they'll say, oh, don't worry about it. Even if it's 6.4, don't worry about it. We'll do something when it hits that threshold. So even in the minor stages of a blood sugar problem, you're going to start having uh, physiological changes inside, including fat accumulating around all of the organs, not just the liver, the other organs as well. And so this is going to affect your entire system, your entire metabolism. This is why we call it a metabolic problem. So a circulation problem, like neuropathy, it's in the fingers, hands, and nose and ears and stuff like that. This is a complication of the metabolic problem. But the metabolic problem in this case itself is the blood sugar problem, and it'll lead to all kinds of other problems. And this is why it's so common that diabetics go blind, right? Because there's a circulation problem, so blood flowing through veins is being impeded, and the eyes are full of tiny little veins, as are the extremities, right? Your veins start large at the heart, and they get smaller and smaller as they branch out. Like a tree trunk is big, and then all the subsequent branches are smaller than that. It's the same with our vascular system in our body. So it's no wonder that the smaller veins get clogged easier. Obviously, right? Put dirt in a hose. The bigger hose is going to take longer to clog up. The smaller ones clog up first. And so that's why you start to experience symptoms, again, neuropathy, numbness in the hands and fingers and nose and ears, blindness because the eyes are full of tiny little veins, and kidney problems because the kidneys are also full of tiny little veins. So these are all complications of the metabolic problem. And since the metabolic problem was caused primarily by nutrient deficiencies, so are the complications.
Thank you for that. That makes so much sense. When oxygen, nutrients can't get into those small blood vessels, it's just not going to function the same. And I would imagine, Coach Sean, with posture therapy, how that might be a benefit, especially for people with above the head conditions with, whether it be ringing in the ears or getting that potential blindness, if posture alignment therapy would help for that. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, please?
Yeah. So in particular, you're just talking about the neuropathy that people get.
Well, mainly how the flow of energy, the electrical system isn't going to function so well in the eyes in particular. Could it be something that posture therapy could help open up that pathway so perhaps they could prevent blindness?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have that little bottleneck highway in the back of our head. And so essentially what's happening is all of the blood, all of the nerves, all the lymphatics, all of that is going in one little alleyway and up to the head. And so anytime we're getting that forward head, it's causing a shrinkage in essentially the space, the real estate that these strings and hoses have to move. And so the more you compress that, the more you shorten the alleyway, the more you create a smaller and smaller hole for these strings and hoses to get through. It's just a less going to the most beneficial organs, the smaller organs that, as Ryan said, have smaller veins and capillaries. They don't get the love that everything else would get, and it's just because they get smaller and smaller, and they're not going to be prioritized essentially. Uh, but it's just like the flow of things. um, yeah, I think that.
Thank you for that. One of the comments here is Lorraine was saying she has diabetes and she has neuropathy. So any tips, perhaps, Coach Ryan, if you could address this on getting started, perhaps the Pour Four Foods might be a good start for her, or do you have any other ideas on how to get started reversing that condition?
Well, of course, blindly without knowing anything else about the person, I would say getting off the poor four foods is number one. Remember that those foods are gluten, oils, fried, and fake. And so the glutens are going to impact your ability to absorb nutrients and create inflammation, which is also what the oils and the deep fried food will be doing. And both of those things will increase nutrient demand, right? Obviously, if you're not absorbing, you need more in order to get some through. And if you have any type of inflammation, your body needs more nutrients to deal with that. So you're increasing the demand while being simultaneously deficient in the first place. And food-wise, I mean, there are some extreme diets that do show, good results. People like to hate on veganism these days, but the vegan diet has historically had very good results when it comes to diabetes and blood pressure and obesity. But all of these diets, though they can help, and even the keto and the carnivore could as well, especially if you're removing the main problematic foods there, the poor four. The problem that all these diets are missing is that none of them are giving you enough of the nutrients to manage blood sugar itself. So there is a lot of people who are on very restricted diets out there who are indeed managing their blood sugar and blood pressure and weight that way, but they need to know that it doesn't need to be that extreme. It definitely does not need to be that restricted. All we need to do is ensure that we do have enough nutrients to manage blood sugar. And again, with the EMF, I would be taking steps to avoid EMF. That's also something that we touch on in our membership. I talk about it as much as I can. We have an educational module about it, and I'll make more in the future, I'm sure. But that's something that anyone can do on their own to start improving their health, is getting off the bad foods and start avoiding EMF. Take them both extremely, extremely seriously. And I can't give you a list of all the nutrients to take because there's so many involved. We use all 90 essential nutrients. And of course, we work with individual people. We don't just give random recommendations. Some people do better on some products than others and different combinations and so on. And, that's why we do ask for a year-long commitment. Because even though I've said that I've seen diabetes go away in 4 days, although that's not the most common, result, I've seen it happen, still, you need a whole year to fully adjust the metabolism. And just because you have a metabolic problem doesn't mean that diabetes or blood sugar is the only problem. So within a year, it should give you and us enough time to straighten most, if not all, of the metabolic problems out. And then you can kind of almost eat whatever you want. Not the poor four, but at the same time, if your system is working well, then having a little bit of bad foods here and there definitely should not be the end of the world. I mean, people in past centuries ate a lot worse than us in some ways. Drank alcohol heavily all the time. Even kids were given beer with breakfast. And yet we barely even heard of diabetes in the history books. It was mentioned in ancient Egypt and stuff, the sweet urine and so on, but it was exceedingly rare. Both type 2 and type 1 were exceedingly rare until this century. So it's the habits that we picked up in this century and the massive nutrient depletion that we created in this century that makes us so sensitive to all these things too. Just saying that if you're very serious about the foods and the EMF and the supplements enough to get your metabolism in check, once your metabolism is running correctly, you should be able to eat like, a plate of cookies at night and not get diabetes, for example, something like that.
Thank you, Ryan. That's awesome. We had a couple comments here. Amber was saying she does get a little tingle in her upper left foot, almost like electricity for a second. So she's got some sort of, something's happening in her foot. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ryan? Would that be kind of indications maybe neuropathy is happening, or perhaps it's an EMF thing?
It could be neuropathy. It could definitely be EMF for sure. I've even had that happen to me in recent years because of EMF. I know it was EMF because I didn't change anything else. And once I fixed the EMF, it stopped happening to me. It would shoot up my leg when I was putting on my pants. And it was very startling because that had never happened before. Yeah, it could be. It could be numerous nutrient deficiencies as well. You need tons of different nutrients for your nervous system. I would be looking at what other symptoms they have to make more sense of it. And of course, anyone who, takes some drastic steps to reduce EMF, if you see a result in your nerve pain, then that tells you that was the cause.
And somebody's asking here, what are any tips for avoiding EMF? Can you share a few?
Yeah, I'm gonna post a YouTube video link in there, in that comment. I was just looking for it right now. But distance is number one. Distance is your friend when it comes to any device. It's for most people, it's the small devices in their life that makes the biggest difference, not just the phone. You know, this microwave should not be on you. Even me, it's on my desk right now. It shouldn't be. I usually put it on the other side of the room when I'm doing these things. But even lamps, you know, a lot of things that people don't think of as being high EMF. Lamp, for me, it's my record player is really bad as well. You can take an EMF meter and find these things and just know that they're not innocuous. You know, a lamp that's plugged in, even if it's not turned on, is giving out the exact same EMF field that a lamp that's turned on is. So having those on your bed, you know, your bedroom should be your sanctuary. Quick tips here, clear your bedroom of all electronics, anything that's plugged in, unplug it. When you go to sleep, move the bed away from outlets if they're against the wall and stuff like that, and start to be mindful about this. Distance yourself. Then there's shields, you can shield things, which is a longer conversation. And then there's devices, which is a much longer conversation. There's lots of devices that can either protect from an EMF output or enhance you to be stronger against that. And yeah, there is more to say, but those are the three basic tips. And I will include a video for that person underneath their comment if I find that video.
And then just a couple people are asking, what is EMF? Can you just explain the definition of it, please?
Well, it's electromagnetic frequencies, and so you know everything that's plugged in with a current running through it has both electricity and magnetism. So that's where you get the EMF. But then there's also radio frequencies. So that's your cell phone or any other device that has Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or anything, even a remote control or a video game controller that's sending a signal to speak to another device. That radio frequency also has biological effects. So it's not just technically the electricity and magnetism, it's also the RF radio frequency.
Thank you for that. One other comment here, Amber had mentioned, she says, yeah, but if you have hereditary or bad veins, meaning she had mentioned that she has varicose veins. I know Dr. Reese talks about if you're not born with it, when you didn't show up on the earth when you're a baby, then it's not hereditary. And so with that, Brian, could you elaborate a little bit more about that for varicose veins, how one would reverse that and or the hereditary part of the puzzle?
Well, varicose veins are a nutrient deficiency. You need a lot of nutrients for your connective tissue. That's what it is. Connective tissue is what holds veins in place, and if they weaken, there could be varicose veins, or it could even be an aneurysm where there's a bulge in that connection. But it's a nutrient deficiency. There's minerals, there's vitamins, amino acids, proteins. There's a lot of different nutrients that are involved in making connective tissue. It's got nothing to do with hereditary. It doesn't matter if your mom has varicose veins. You'll get varicose veins too if you have similar habits to her. And you'll already have similar bacteria to her because she's your mother. And you know, you get a large start of your bacterial colonies and blueprint from them, from your parents and your environment. So you share that. You share the same food habits, even if it's not the exact same. You're eating from the same grocery store in the same nutrient deficient society. So even if you shop in different aisles in the grocery store, you're both going to be nutrient deficient, just in you know, slightly different ways. And you grew up in the same culture as your mom too. You know, maybe you both took antibiotics when you were a kid, or you know, painkillers when you have a painful period or something like that. You know, there's pretty similar things that we're exposed to with us and our parents. So families share habits, they share diets, and that's why a lot of people have very similar disease states to their parents. If you don't do something different, you're going to get the same result.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to pop over to Coach Gingy to hopefully add on to this topic a little bit. It seems like sometimes thoughts are things when it comes to what we believe we have or what labels the medical system has provided us with. What do you feel about that, Gingy?
Yeah, so the labels and the ideas and the beliefs and stuff, those are all important to be aware of. Because like this lady was saying, well, maybe it's hereditary. Maybe it's genetic. Maybe it's not something that I did. Maybe it's something that I inherited. And that idea will yield certain results. It'll have you taking certain actions. It'll have you ignoring certain information. And so, what Ryan's doing here and talking about, it's not really the genetics that's the issue. It's the similar bacteria, it's the environment, it's the eating habits, and I would also say the mental and emotional habits and routines that people get in. There's so many similarities in familial dynamics that you can't just say it's the genetic thing. Because I mean, they've done deep studies on this saying that they take two identical twins and put them on different diets or put them on different routines and stuff. And while there are similarities and potential susceptibilities, they have vastly different results based off of their environment, based off of their practices, the way they think, the way they eat. So it's important to look at this and think what ideas you're operating under, what assumptions you're operating under, because those are going to dictate what you do and what you think and how you feel about stuff. For example, I think I said this on the mindfulness class today or a couple days ago, but you don't do anything without thinking about it first. You don't go to a doctor without thinking that you need to go to see a doctor. You don't And then once you get there, as Dr. Reese has talked about a bunch, they give you a diagnosis. They give you another idea. They give you another definition or reasoning as to why and what's going on for you. And then you internalize that. You say, okay, well, now I have diabetes. As opposed to, something like Ryan would say is, no, you have a nutritional deficiency. You don't have this disease. You don't have this genetic issue. You have habits in your life that have actually created a deficiency resulting as diabetes. Diabetes would be like the label they put on the symptoms, which then allows them to go in with their diagnosis and treat and try to cure. All these words, they're so loaded. A while ago, I looked up the definition of the word cure underneath the American Medical Association. I don't know if it's still the going definition, but it's to use a medical treatment by a medical doctor who's licensed and has good standing with the state to suppress the symptoms or alleviate the symptoms for up to 4 years. If they make it to 4 or 5 years, then they can use the label cure. Hey, this cures you. But all they're talking about is the symptoms. What we're talking about here is the underlying cause. And that doesn't fall underneath the same definition of cure the way they talk about it. So it's almost like you have to shift the way that you think and the way that you define words and your experience in order to get better results. Because if you are constantly chasing a cure, all you're doing is trying to suppress symptoms or alleviate symptoms. And you're not looking at what the underlying root cause is and trying to remediate or eliminate or reverse that. So it's important to keep in mind where your head's at through this entire healing journey and this healing process, because people will get dogmatic about things. Oh, it's the carnivore diet. Oh, I've got to go to the gym, every single day and work out to lose weight. I've got to this and this and this and this, and they get stuck in those ideas. And like I said, there's a cause and effect relationship to every thought pattern and belief system that you have, where those thoughts, that mental activity, that data in your mind, consciously and subconsciously with the inner child, that creates very specific results. The cause starts here, and then the effect comes downstream. There's a reason why you have similar beliefs and practices as your parents, because you absorbed those ideas, you absorbed the ways of thinking. I mean, I can't stress how important it is to understand that from the mindfulness perspective, the root cause is always the way that you're thinking about and how present you are to things and the data that you've installed in your subconscious.
Thank you, Gingy, for that. Switching gears a little bit, Linda is commenting, my shoulders are in pain. I cannot lift up my arms. It's very painful. I had past tense, a gallbladder 3 weeks ago. So it sounds like she had one removed. With this, there's a lot of key things in here. Shoulder pain, gallbladder, can't lift up arms. Those are things that a lot of our members reverse a lot. I mean, obviously you can't get your gallbladder back if it's been taken away, but the function of it can be supported. Coach Ryan or Coach Sean, can you share any insights about our program or maybe any stories that you can recall of people that have had success reversing some of these issues with us?
Well, I'll start off because Ryan's gonna hit the home run with this, but uh, I kind of want to go back into what Gingy was saying because that was really important. I always use the analogy if a storm is going off or alarms are going off because the storm's coming, would you go to the alarm and try to fix the alarm and wonder why it's on, or would you actually prepare and take the note that the alarm is trying to give you to prepare for the storm? And so I feel like a lot of people are going to the alarm and trying to fix the alarm and turn the alarm off, actually preparing for the storm. The root cause is what we're trying to get to. I'll get on the call sometimes and people would say, I have spinal stenosis, I have carpal tunnel. I then give like a life story. When I was an athlete, I fell on my butt, I fell down the stairs or something like that. They give us a whole life story. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What is your current symptoms? What are you experiencing right now? And from there, we can kind of do that to like it's like a crumb trail. We can kind of go and route our way to the root cause from where they currently are at. Because the only alarms that are going off are the alarms that matter. If you had a symptom 3 weeks ago and you're telling us about it and it's gone, that's not relevant to us. And so I just say, like, even with the symptoms that she's giving us, with the shoulder, it's a larger issue. And oftentimes I'll give people exercises that have nothing to do with the shoulder. And they're like, why does my shoulder feel better? I'll tell them I bet if you stand up, pigeon toe your feet and try to raise that arm that's hurt above your head, you'll probably have an easier time doing it because the problem is not your shoulder, it's what's around it. And so that's why we always say the site of the pain and the source of the pain are two different things. Sometimes it's more so the source is nowhere near the site of the pain. So,
Thank you. Coach Ryan, do you have any insights on this that you could share?
Yeah, of course. And thankfully, Linda here, who made the comment, said she did not get her gallbladder removed, which is very, very good.
Fantastic.
So you're asking for like case studies and stuff. We have a lot of people who come in with their gallbladder removed and they have all kinds of different symptoms, and no one ever told them that their gallbladder served an important function to absorb fats because gallbladder holds bile. The bile is made in the liver. Bile has a few functions, but one of them is to help absorb fats. So the liver dumps it into the gallbladder holds it until there's food that comes into the intestine, and then the bile swoops in to coat it in enzymes, basically that help to digest fat. So without that, you're going to have a fat absorption problem. And since fats are part of all of our hormones, all of our soft tissues, which includes all of our organs, which make the hormones as well, I mean, including the digestive tract itself, which takes nutrients out of food and into the system. I mean, all this stuff involves fatty nutrients. Fatty nutrients are needed in every cell of the body. If you have an absorption problem with them, you could have literally any problem in the body. Even things we typically think of as hard tissue, like bones and joints, have soft tissue involved, have fatty nutrients involved. They're involved in literally everything that goes on in the body. So, yeah, they could come in and think, oh, I have osteoporosis, so I just need a bunch of minerals to rebuild my bones. That's not true. You need to absorb fat in order to get anything done in the body. So, yeah, we have tons of cases where they had not only, structural issues and hormonal, but, digestive issues. They got their gallbladder out and then they've had trouble with food ever since. And, all they need to know is that they need to consume bile as a supplement before they eat for the rest of their life. We use bile and a bunch of different enzymes and actually a substance called betaine hydrochloride. We have a product with all of those in it that people who have their gallbladder missing or a gallbladder problem should take before meals, because when the gallbladder is removed, your gallbladder is no longer, well, there's no gallbladder, so you're no longer releasing a timed package of bile for the food. it's just dripping. They just connect the liver directly to the intestine, so it just leaks in all the time. So it's just not enough to get the job done. And if someone is having a gallbladder pain without it being removed or anything like that, first of all, they should take enzymes before they eat for a while at least. Not necessarily permanently, but there's nothing wrong with that either. But step one would be to stop eating for 2 to 3 days. Fast for 2 to 3 days. And in the vast majority of cases, that pain will go away within that 3 days. And that also applies to any other pain in a digestive organ, whether it's the appendix or the pancreas or something like that. If you're having any random pain in the midsection, chances are fasting for 3 days will fix that problem. And then stop eating processed foods after that, including all the glutens, all the grains. Get rid of all that, and probably the pain will never come back. So anyone who's having gallbladder pain, those should be your first steps. Get off the bad foods, fast for 2 to 3 days, take enzymes before meals, and that should fix at least that problem.
Thank you for that information. Actually, you answered somebody's question, because in the comments they were saying, what if you have gallstones? But it sounds like you just shared what to do or what not to do so they can get out of that situation. Another comment here that came in a little while ago is from Annette. I keep getting ringworm. Is there anything to take to make it go away for good? And I don't know if you can share anything specific like that, Coach Ryan, or if you have any suggestions.
Well, ringworm is a fungus, so it's very much like candida. I know that a lot of people on the internet here, they a pill for everything. And I'm not saying that's true with this person who's asking this comment, but it really just doesn't work that way. You're getting ringworm constantly because you're too acidic, first of all. And you need a lot of minerals and other nutrients, and you just need an overall healthy body to be alkaline. And for a lot of people, that's going to be what it takes. Now, you might be able to take something that's traditionally antimicrobial, like caprylic acid or something like that, colloidal silver and diatomaceous earth. And, there's lots of stuff that I like to use when someone does have candida or a fungus problem. But they need to understand itself is not the solution. It's like getting the fire down, getting the fire a little bit under control while we work on equalizing the body and just getting the body working efficiently. And at that point, the ringworm should not be there. I myself had a big problem with ringworm for years. It was very difficult to get rid of, and nothing really worked other than keep the symptoms at bay, like creams and stuff like that, over the counter and steroid creams and whatnot, and even coconut oil and all kinds of things that you can put on top of it. It helped a little bit, but it wasn't until I really got started on the program, the nutritional program, and got alkaline, and all my pains went away as well. My insomnia, my cramping, my twitching, my childhood arthritis is what they called it. All that went away, and it was several months later that I noticed not getting ringworm anymore or nail infections anymore. It's the same thing, right? It's fungus on the nails and stuff. I was getting it all over, and it just went away, and it never came back. But it was fixing the body. It wasn't using a bunch of antimicrobial stuff, even though it's okay to use those things up front. You've got to fix the metabolism. You got to top up with all the minerals, and you should not have any of these fungal type infection problems, not just in the tonsils, but also UTIs and ear infections, and that stuff should just not happen.
Thank you for that. And there's so many comments in the feed right now of what can I do for this? What can I do for that? The commonality here is everybody's individual. Everybody has personal needs. Everybody has personal symptoms, and it's hard to give a one-stop answer for each of you. So if you're curious and want to get some true healing, head to toe healing, check out Dr. Reese's books first, Peace Over Pain or Medical Monopoly. Read those and get a foundation of what is needed to get head to toe healing so you have a better understanding. You can listen to them on Audible. It takes maybe 3 or 4 hours. Dr. Reese actually reads them to you, so it's fun to listen to him read those books to you. And you can listen to it over and over again. So if you miss something, you can catch something else next time. And then when you're ready, reach out to us at drkevinreese.com. Schedule an appointment. It's free. You can schedule a free appointment online for a 15-minute consultation with one of our coaches, and we'll talk to you about yours and see if it's a fit for you, because What we find is people have been struggling for years and years to try to find a solution, and it's like being on a hamster wheel, and they're just going in circles. We help guide you to some great solutions so that way some of your symptoms can drop off and you can start thriving and living life more enjoyably. It's incredible. But getting back to our topic, there are so many different, I'm just kind of going back to my notes here. There's so many other conditions and symptoms that occur when people have diabetes. It could be frequent urination, it could be excessive thirst. And I'm just curious, with those two elements, Coach Ryan, how can one combat those? Or does it need to be a complete reversal, or can there be some baby steps that happen in the interim to get those turned around?
Well, I mean, the baby step would be to get off the bad foods, but this isn't really a thing where it isn't really a situation where you need to do it incrementally. You know, we give all the nutrients all at once, get you off all the bad foods all at once. There's no reason to slide into that other than psychologically. You know, a lot of people won't commit to the food program until they've like eaten what's in their cupboards or something like that. But there's nothing physically stopping them from doing it all at once. You don't need to ease into it with only a few exceptions. If you have a very sensitive stomach or something, you know, might take it slower. But other than that, you just you put it all in, and those frequent thirst and urination stuff. I mean, your body wants to dilute the sugar that's in the blood. That's why you're thirsty, and it has to urinate more to get rid of some of that sugar. That's why the sugar is sweet. It's how they used to diagnose diabetes back in the day, right? They would taste the urine, and if it tasted sweet, you had diabetes, basically. So, you know, there's no baby steps that you need to do other than to give your body all 90 essential nutrients and get off the bad foods at the same time, and that should decrease pretty quickly. It usually does not take that long.
Thank you for that. What about unexplained weight loss? I mean, it can go in opposite directions. Sometimes people have excessive weight gain when they're sick, and other people lose a lot of weight and can't keep it on their body. Do you have any insights or perspective on that?
Yeah, it's interesting that diabetes used to be characterized by wasting away. That was the primary symptom. It wasn't obesity. It was the opposite. You waste away turn into a skeleton, turn into a walking mummy, basically. And honestly, there's a very long and technical explanation that some people believe that EMF caused the fundamental change in how diabetes itself. And I'm not going to get into that, but I do think that is a factor. But when it comes to wasting away, I do think it's primarily a malabsorption problem. They're not absorbing enough nutrients. We see this with gluten intolerant people. We see this with all kinds of people. You know, they're too skinny and have a problem gaining weight because they're not absorbing enough from their food.
That makes sense. And that seems like that happens a lot with other chronic conditions, especially the gut issue conditions like colitis and Crohn's and IBS, where people just can't absorb nutrition and they can't keep the weight on.
And you could lose a dangerous amount of weight very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Janelle has a question. Chronic ear infection and migraines in minors. Do you have any alternatives than ibuprofen?
What is the question?
Um, it sounds like a family member potentially that has chronic ear infections and migraines. Are there any alternatives for pain relief than ibuprofen?
Yeah, stop eating the poor four foods because migraines are almost certainly almost always caused by a food problem. That's it. You don't take pain to mask, sorry, you don't take a drug to mask the pain. You stop the source of the pain. And the source is almost certainly a food.
That makes a lot of sense.
Gluten and dairy be top of the list, by the way. I know dairy's not on our poor four food list, but if you have a problem with dairy, migraines are one of the most common ways that that's going to show up. But I would get off all the poor four and dairy, and you can try reintroducing dairy later, doing a proper elimination diet where you monitor what happens when you add it back in. But at the very bare minimum, I'd get off the poor four right now. And don't take ibuprofen to mask something because you shouldn't need it.
So earlier, I believe you shared a brief story about somebody that was able to get off of their insulin in a very short period of time. rare case, what on average, when somebody's off the poor four foods, getting the right nutrition, doing the posture alignment therapy, doing the mindfulness training, what do you think average time might be for somebody to get off insulin?
Well, to clarify, the woman I was talking about earlier was a type 2 diabetic and she was not on insulin.
Mm.
We have seen people get off of insulin, several people, especially if they were diagnosed with type 1 later in life, or they're just a plain old type 2 and they're given insulin eventually. There's an explanation for that, why that happens, but we're running out of time here. It's way easier for them if it happened later. If you've been on insulin since you were 2 years old, you may need it for the rest of your life. But we commonly see people, even true type 1 diabetics, be able to lower their insulin dose. And again, it does take a while, not an exceedingly long amount of time. We're not talking years. We're talking months here. But yeah, it can happen. It has happened many, many, many different times, both children and adults, at all different types of different, comorbidities, other diseases going on and stuff like that. Still, they head to toe healing, and most likely they will be able to either reduce their insulin dramatically or eliminate it entirely, depending on the situation.
That's fantastic. What about slow healing wounds? A lot of times that happens for people that are diabetic. They might get a cut or a bruise or an infection, and it takes an excessively long time to heal. How can nutrition support that a little bit better for them, or how can they reduce the time for infection or injury repair in their body?
Well, we already mentioned that blood flow is decreased when you have a blood problem. That's why we get the neuropathy complications and kidney and eye problems and stuff like that. And remember that nutrients that heal stuff, not just vitamins and minerals, but also your own compounds in your body that you make, they're delivered to the problem site. If you bang your knee, it becomes inflamed and your body sends blood there. If you have a blood flow problem, you're going to have a problem getting blood to the area that needs to be healed, and the blood carries the stuff, it carries the equipment to fix it, right? It's like, you got a construction crew, but they need a truck full of wood and nails and stuff to do the job. So you're not going to have those nails and hammers delivered to the work site if your blood flow is impeded. And just in general, someone who has diabetes already has proven that they have nutrient deficiencies or they wouldn't have diabetes. Whatever the cause was, the result is nutrient deficiencies. So nutrient deficiencies can be the root cause themselves, and it could be poisons, it could be EMF, it could be other infections and stuff like that that cause more nutrients to be depleted. But this is why I'm saying whatever the root cause is, the result is nutrient deficiency. By having diabetes, by definition, you have nutrient deficiencies. So therefore, you're also going to be deficient in several of the key that you need to heal wounds. So it's no surprise that nutrient deficiency diseases like diabetes or like arthritis or like osteoporosis usually come with other symptoms because nutrients are used all throughout the body and all of them have multiple roles. They do multiple different things in the body. People think of like vitamin C, oh, it's for the immune system. Well, that's true, but it's also used in connective tissue as well. So it's a structure and function. The molecule itself has both structural and functional benefits and roles, and that's true with practically every nutrient. So if you're low on nutrients that you need for blood sugar, you can bet that your body also needs those same nutrients to do a bunch of other things in the body, including heal your wounds.
Thank you for that. Somebody just asked a quick question on a saying, is there any hope for somebody with type 1 diabetic from birth? Ryan?
There is hope. First of all, anyone with type 1 diabetes or any disease is likely to have other problems as well. Maybe it's obesity, maybe it's headaches, maybe it's osteoporosis, maybe they have poor sleep, maybe they get bloating and digestive pain after they eat. Whatever it is, cataracts, you name it, nosebleeds, anything like that, anything, literally any symptom. But none of those have anything to do with type 1 diabetes. So technically, if you have true type 1 diabetes, which I call a birth defect, it's an inborn error of metabolism. If you're truly born with not enough beta cells in the pancreas to produce enough insulin, then you will need insulin for the rest of your life. Once you've dialed in that amount of insulin that you need, there should be no other complications, right? And you might be taking too much insulin because you don't have enough nutrients. You still have a blood sugar problem fundamentally. So that's why we see people be able to lower their doses even when they are type 1. But anything else that's going on in your life, again, headaches, nosebleeds, poor sleep, waking up to urinate, tremors, varicose veins, whatever it is, all of those things have nothing to do with that beta cell dysfunction. So, what is the hope? The hope is that whatever symptoms that you do have, aside from the specific type 1, those can and should be reversed.
That's fantastic.
So it's a quality of life thing as
That's
well, right? Even if there's, put another example, cerebral palsy. It's a birth defect where the child is born handicapped. Basically, the cerebellum governs their motor functions. You can't fix that. Once the cake is baked, you're done, right? You have cerebral palsy. But that person can have a bunch of other uncomfortable symptoms. Again, from diarrhea, constipation, bloating, pain, cramps, acne, whatever it is. All of those quality of life things can be reversed. And it's the same with a type 1 diabetic. I've seen very few type 1 diabetics that don't have some kind of lifestyle problem, some kind of symptom that impacts their lifestyle. Those can be reversed. If you have type 1 diabetes and arthritis, that can be reversed, right? Type 1 diabetes and headaches, the headaches can be reversed, etc.
That's great news. I want to pop over and chat with Coach Gingy and Coach Sean on this next topic to start out, which is fatigue. A lot of times people that are diabetic, they get a ton of fatigue. They're tired, they're weak all the time. Coach Gingy, how does the mind-body connection play in that? Could you provide your perspective on that?
I was actually going to bring this up earlier. This comes up towards the end here. And that's how it works. One of the things I was going to bring up earlier was the fact that more than often, people have like just a reflex to tense up. If there's stress going on, if they're overworked, if they're anxious, or they're dealing with some type of problem in their life, they're going to have their muscles tense up. And if you're out of alignment, like Coach Sean's probably going to talk about here in a second, that tension could pull you more into the pattern that you're in. It maybe gives you more forward head or something like that. And so this is something I learned actually in a training room when I was feeling exhausted. I realized, okay, I've only gotten 3 hours of sleep the last like 3 or 4 nights in a row. We've been going. I need to like get some energy. I'm feeling really burnt out here. I'm feeling really tired. And that is a form of fatigue, not necessarily because it's a chronic thing for me, but in that moment. And so I thought, well, what happens when you go to sleep? All your muscles start relaxing and your body and then maybe it's because there's less tension in the body that the battery can kind of charge up. So I tested this theory and I laid down and intentionally relaxed every muscle in my body. And I kid you not, it gave me in like 2 minutes enough energy for the next 2, 3 hours to just run through the rest of the training series. And so I started recommending this to people. If you're feeling tired, lethargic, fatigued, feel like you don't have the ability to focus, get present. Be mindful of how much tension you're holding in your body. You may find out that the whole day you've been like this with your shoulders and your ears, and then you go, oh, well, I could let go of those. And you immediately start to feel a little boost of energy with every muscle you relax. And if you stay mindful, if you stay present and aware to what's going on in your body, then you could have this be a daily or momentary practice where you're constantly trying to relax, constantly trying to settle into your bones and your structure. And if you do the posture work, you're actually going to be settling into a framework that doesn't require you to compensate. Like if you're leaning forward, you're going to have all these muscles on just to stop you from falling over. But if you're straight up and down, it's almost like you can rest on the frame. And so I'd love to hear what Sean has to say about this. But other than just being present and aware to how much tension you're holding in your body, the other side is how much tension you're holding in your mind, in your psyche. Because you may be thinking about the 10 different things on your to-do list nonstop. You may be trying to remember, I got to call this person when I get off of work. And all of those things can create like a mental overwhelm. And if that's the case, if that's the cause of the fatigue, if that's the underlying root cause, as we say, then you'd want to start exporting some of that data out of your head. by making a list and saying, I'll just get to this tomorrow, or adding an event in your calendar. I'm going to call this person at this time. When you start making time and creating time for these things in your life, you no longer need to hold them up here. If you're fearing a conversation that you're going to have with somebody, especially someone close like a family member, just get it over with. Just get it done. Just text them and say, hey, we got to talk later tonight. I'll see you at 6. And all of a sudden, you'll notice that that alleviates the pressure because then you're going to have the conversation leader. So this is all about managing the amount that you're holding at any given time, psychologically or physically, because all of those things contribute to a sense of overwhelm or just full out fatigue from holding on for so.
Thank you for that. Coach Sean, do you have any perspective on the postural side of things as far as fatigue and how it affects the structure of the body and the muscles?
Yeah, I feel that mindfulness and PAT coincide in a lot of categories, mainly because what would be called mindfulness, or in like the regular lifestyle, what would be called mindfulness, we would call kinesthetic awareness. And that's just our ability to notice how we're positioned and, the different impingements or whatever we're having going on our body. And so at the time when I get people into the classes, they have expressed to me that they didn't relax something until I told them to. Like we could be lying down, a completely relaxed position. Lying down is like one of the most relaxing positions. However, I say release your shoulders and you finally get that kinesthetic awareness to your shoulder and you're like, oh yeah, whoa, that was a little tense. Oh, why am I tensing up my jaw? And then you continue to go down the body and figure out you've been tensing this stuff up all day. And you say, why am I fatigued? Because you're just in a tense form. You're literally using your muscles. It's like pressing the gas in a car without it actually moving, like it being in park and you're just revving the engine, using up the gas. You're not doing anything, but you're doing a lot of nothing, essentially. And so, one funny thing was during class, I have to constantly remind people to breathe. People forget to breathe. And when they're in stressful situations, they'll stop breathing. And so, like this really it could, I hope it changes people's mindset that when people are stressed out the most, they stop breathing. And exercise is one of the most demanding activities for the brain, if you actually think about it. And so a lot of people have struggles with just breathing during exercise. But imagine just being stressed out, sitting in your office, sitting in your car. You're so stressed out and you're just not breathing. And that's the one thing that helps you relax the body, helps you. It's like that tether between your parasympathetic nervous system and your sympathetic nervous system. And so you not being able to breathe, you not being able to like know that you're tensed up is probably why you're fatigued throughout the day because you're creating extra work for yourself. And so, yeah, I love that, the more I learned about posture, the more I realized how similar it can be to mindfulness, or it just has a lot of aspects of mindfulness. And when you're in this program, I, I assume and I hope you realize that everything has a lot to do with everything. And so you can't really get too far with one of these legs of the chair, as Karen was the first one to coin that. And so if you're missing one leg in the chair, you're gonna fall over. You're not gonna be as successful as someone that's applying all three of the macro methods of healing.
Thank you for that, Coach Sean. Coach Ryan, did you have anything to add in regards to fatigue on the nutritional side?
Well, one interesting thing that I don't think a lot of people consider is that high blood sugar actually causes low blood sugar. You can look this up. Is hypoglycemia caused by diabetes? They say most often it is. And that's in part because people are taking drugs and insulin to lower the blood sugar and it can lower it too much. And, they can just eat a little bit too much or not enough or something and crash into low blood sugar. When your blood sugar crashes below its normal baseline, below like, 85 or something like that in the American values, then your body will panic because low blood sugar is an emergency situation. So it hits the panic button. The panic button causes the adrenals to release cortisol into the system. That is going to make you tired. This is what chronic fatigue is also called adrenal fatigue, right? So being in a state of blood sugar, having a blood sugar problem, even if it's not full-blown diabetes, you are most likely calling upon your adrenals to pump cortisol in kind of all the time, very regularly, which causes the sugar to go up, causes the cholesterol to go up in the body as well, and it makes you tired. After you get that cortisol response from a fight or flight situation, once you run from the tiger, when you stop, you're tired. You're more tired than when you started, right? So a lot of people are running on this adrenal fatigue roller coaster all the time, dipping a little bit low, body blasting cortisol to wake you up. And, again, it's not really to wake you up, but it's to pump blood sugar or sugar into your blood, glycogen into your blood. And after that calms down a little bit, you're going to be more tired. If that happens to you every day, you're going to have what they call chronic fatigue. And not just to mention something that I mentioned earlier, that you need a bunch of nutrients for your blood sugar. You need those same nutrients to create energy in your cells. If you have a digestion problem that caused malabsorption, which then caused the blood sugar problem, well, you're also not absorbing the nutrients that you need to get energy from food, from nutrients, to produce ATP in the cells, and so on. You will be tired if you're nutrient deficient. Lots of different nutrients are required for our metabolism to run correctly, and that's not just digestion, that's also turning food and nutrients into energy.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that, Ryan. So for those of you that, well, we're going to conclude our call in just a few minutes here. But those are you that are curious about head to toe healing and are really wanting answers and getting on a path of a conscious, intentional healing journey instead of just trying to get bits and pieces from various social media accounts out there. If you really want to do something this year for yourself, maybe our program is for you, but start with Peace Over Pain or the Medical Monopoly book. Read these first, get a big picture of head to toe healing, and then visit our website, drkevinreese.com. There's loads of information there. There's educational videos, there's a start page, there's our testimonials from a lot of our clients on that page. So you can find out, is it for you? But it's really about making a choice. Do you really want to continue on the direction you're at now, or do you want to come to the fork in the road and go down a different path and really have some true healing for your body and begin to enjoy life and not be in pain? And that's what we strive to do to help guide you in our program. You do the work, you show up, we don't do it for you. You have to engage. But we would love to chat with you, and we can't wait to see you again next week. Same time, same place for Head to Toe Healing Live. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Stay healthy.
Take care.